Hey, good evening. It is 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. My name is Malini Sims, and I am a principal planner with the town of Oro Valley and will be facilitating tonight's meeting regarding the proposed rezoning and conditional use permit to allow development of a commercial center with a drive-through on the northwest corner of Oracle Road and Suffolk Hills Drive. Next slide, please. So typically, an in-person neighborhood meeting is held prior to formal submittal of a rezoning and conditional use permit application. The town is legally required to process an applicant's request in a timely manner, and with the ongoing COVID-19 social distancing requirements, an online meeting is the best solution under the existing circumstances and timing requirements. Online meetings are being utilized as a town-wide policy for all public meetings, not just tonight's. With that said, the mechanics of tonight's meeting are clearly going to be a bit different than our regular in-person meetings. As a facilitator of the meeting, I am a neutral party, but my number one goal tonight is to hear from you while ensuring a fair, efficient, and productive meeting. I understand many of you participated in meetings for previous proposals for this property, but tonight is both yours and staff's opportunity to hear about the current proposal for the first time in depth. To accomplish our goal this evening, we first want to provide everyone with adequate information to understand the process and property owner's proposal. The agenda for tonight's meeting is as follows. First, I will provide a brief overview of the applicant's request, including the existing and proposed zoning requirements and concerns we have heard to date. Then the property owner's representative, Ms. Kerry Sylvan, is going to provide more information about their proposal. Next, it will be your turn. Again, our main goal for this evening is to hear from you and foster discussion. I do want to emphasize that we are in the very early stages of the property owner's proposal. In fact, we do not have a formal submittal yet. The town provides this service and requires the property owner to hold a neighborhood meeting at the front end of the process, as it is important to hear your comments and questions on the request early on to help inform a future formal submittal. Your feedback is critical in shaping an ultimate proposal that will be considered by town council. Public participation has shaped every rezoning application in Oro Valley, and we expect this one to be no different. Following your questions and comments, I'll provide more information about the next steps should the property owner move forward. Again, this is the first of several opportunities for you to provide input. We are going to do our best to get through as many questions and comments as we can tonight. Everyone's microphone, other than myself, will be muted throughout the meeting tonight, unless it is your turn to speak. This is to ensure a smooth and efficient meeting as possible. Only I can turn on your microphone at the appropriate time when it's your turn, at which point you will be able to ask questions or provide comments. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, I will provide a quick how-to on raising your computer or telephone activated virtual hand when you have a question later in my presentation. Tonight's meeting is scheduled to go to 7:30 p.m. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to visit obprojects.com and visit this project's webpage, as the Zoom meeting and the PowerPoint presentation will be posted on this project's webpage as soon as possible. We have found out that Zoom takes a few days to process the recording. However, it will be posted online as soon as we receive it. We will also be posting a summary of this meeting on the website that will be taken into account as we formulate a recommendation and will be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as Town Council for their consideration. Next slide, please. So where are we in the process? Again, we do not have a formal submittal yet, but we do anticipate one from the property owner after this meeting. It is also important to establish that this request is to develop private property. All property owners have the right to request review of their development proposal. This is not the town's proposal. It is the property owners. It is their charge to create, justify, and seek town council review and consideration of their proposal. Furthermore, the town is required by state law to process this request. Again, this meeting is the first of several opportunities for you to stay engaged in the process and provide feedback. We anticipate the proposed design will evolve as the process moves forward. To continue this conversation, a second neighborhood meeting will be held after the property owner formally submits their application. The town will continue to monitor the safety precautions for COVID-19, and if it is safe to do so, this meeting will be held in person. Both the applicant's requests require consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council. These public hearings are also opportunities for you to speak and provide feedback. When these meetings are scheduled, yellow card notices will be sent out in advance of each meeting, and signs will also be posted on site, so please keep a lookout for both. If you did not receive a postcard for tonight's meeting and would like one, please email myself at msims@orovalleyaz.gov to be sure you get one for all future meetings related to tonight's case. So now for some background about the subject property. Next slide, please. The subject area is outlined in yellow on the screen. It includes the vacant property on the northwest corner of Oracle Road and Suffolk Hills Drive, and the existing developed property on the southwest corner of Oracle Road and Suffolk Hills Drive. To the north is a daycare and other businesses, and to the west is Oracle Road and a commercial plaza with larger anchor stores such as Sprouts, Kohl's, and Walmart. The subject area abuts the town boundaries to the south, which are shown in blue. The property just south of the subject area is in Pima County and currently vacant. To the east of the Suffolk Hills neighborhood, which I assume many of those joining us tonight live in or close by. Next slide, please. The entire area, including the neighborhood, was annexed into Oro Valley in 2003. As many of you joining us this evening are probably aware, there was a proposal to rezone this site and develop both office and restaurant space in 2017. A neighborhood meeting was held for this project. The applicant did not move forward with their submittal. Some of the concerns heard during the previous meeting are listed on the screen, many of which have been reiterated by residents for the current proposal. Next slide, please. Again, the purpose of this meeting is to hear and discuss the property owner's current proposal for the first time in depth. The applicant's proposal includes two separate yet related requests. The first is to rezone the property from residential service to commercial 1 to accommodate 22,750 square feet of commercial space on the northern parcel. The second request is for a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through use on the southwest corner of the site, which is circled in blue on the screen. Next slide, please. The first request to rezone the property to Commercial 1 or the Community Commercial Zoning District requires a minimum of 5 acres of land, which is met by rezoning both parcels to the north and south of Suffolk Hills Drive. In comparing the existing and proposed development standards, the allowed height and setbacks from Oracle Road are the same. However, the setbacks are greater along the side and rear in a commercial zoning district. This means the space between the proposed buildings and neighborhood is 10 feet greater in a commercial zoning district. However, the main difference between the zoning districts are the uses allowed. Residential service includes office uses and professional uses, which you see today north of the property, but also more residential uses such as senior care facilities and apartments. Whereas the commercial zoning district includes restaurants, retail, and service businesses. If approved, this would not only allow the proposed development on the northern portion, but also broaden the allowed uses in the existing development south of Suffolk Hills Drive. Next slide, please. As previously stated, the applicant is proposing a drive-through use on the southwest corner of the property. drive-thrus do require a conditional use permit, which is a separate request in addition to the rezoning request. Conditional use permits provide more focus on compatibility to the surrounding area. Specifically, the proposed drive-thru will be reviewed for its hours of operation, traffic impacts, and to ensure the use is not detrimental to the public with regard to health and safety. In addition to requiring a conditional use permit, the code also provides further requirements for the timing and location of drive-thrus. Drive-thrus cannot be open for business until 50% of the site is developed and must be located at least 250 feet away from the abutting edge of a residential district. There is a code amendment currently in process to allow Town Council the ability to reduce this 250-foot requirement when warranted. This code amendment will be considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission this July. The applicant again has joined us this evening to provide more details about the proposed commercial uses and drive-thru. But before I turn it over to them, I do want to recognize that we have heard from several of you via email and phone regarding this request. The concerns noted today are the use of online Zoom meetings, which again, this format is the town's policy for all public meetings to respect the current social distancing measures, and other concerns similar to those from the previous proposal. These include noise and odor associated with the use, traffic impacts to Suffolk Hills Drive, and safety at the intersection, lighting, drainage impacts, and views. Now I will turn the meeting over to Ms. Kerry Sylvan, who is the consultant representing the property owner. She will provide more details about their proposal and address some of these concerns. All right, Ms. Sylvan, you should be good to go.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to apologize right now because I have a feeling I'm about to be blinded by the sun as it comes down. This is my first Zoom meeting in my office. My name is Kerry Sylvan. I'm with Lazarus and Sylvan, and I am representing the developer of the project. We have a few of the team members here with us this evening, Andrew Call and Chris Hake, who are here from Thompson Thrift, which is the development company, the developer. Kevin Hall with Cypress Civil Development is our civil engineer, and Eric Barrett with ARC Studios, who's our landscape architect. To the extent that there are questions that are better for them to answer, we'll be asking them to step up and answer those questions. What I'd like to do is first introduce Thompson Thrift, Andrew Call, to go ahead and talk a little bit about Thompson Thrift and who they are, and then I'll take over and run through the project proposal.
Great. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Melanie. Appreciate the intro. So, conscious of everyone's time, I want to just give a brief introduction to Thompson Thrift and who we are. We're a multi-level developer based out of Indianapolis. We opened up an office here in Phoenix about 5 or 6 years ago, and we've been working hard here in the Phoenix area and throughout Arizona and the Mountain West region. We've done several projects throughout the area. We focus on a lot of our national tenants and national businesses, and also some local businesses that are repeat that we work with often throughout the different metro areas that we focus on. We focus very heavily on bringing our projects to fruition that help serve the communities around us and really make a positive impact for people that are there. I think with the neighborhoods and our neighbors that are existing there, bringing businesses that successfully serve them makes the business successful, makes the area successful, makes the neighbors successful as well in the city. So we try to look for those opportunities that can really bring everybody together and make a positive impact for the area. I think there was another slide there. So we can flip through a couple of these slides. These are just some examples that we've done here in Arizona of similar projects. We've done some projects that are a little bit larger scale with some mixed use projects. I selected a couple of handful of projects that are a little bit similar and closer in size and magnitude to this one. So a little bit smaller projects that we've worked on that compare well to this project on Oracle Road. So these are just some examples of the architecture that we like to focus on and the quality of the construction and the buildings and the design. We hire local designers that know the areas that we come to, and we try to really match and find some good designs that benefit everybody. We can flip to a couple more. The next one. Again, this is just another example of one we've done here in Arizona. Again, smaller in size. But you can see this one's a little bit more modern. The previous one had a little bit more of a Southwest flair to the design. And this one here is a little bit more of a modern design, matching some of the city overlays and design requirements and guidelines we have on these projects. But that's us in a nutshell. So I hand it back over to Kerry.
Thanks, Andrew. Melina, you can go to the next slide. So I probably don't have to tell many of you where the property is located. You've all lived near it for quite some time. It's the northeast corner of Oracle and Suffolk. It's the redevelopment site. Included in the rezoning, as staff indicated, is the southeast corner, the office complex. There's no redevelopment planned on that site. That's just for to meet the 5-acre minimum for the C1 zoning. You can go to the next slide. Most of you know Oracle Road is the major road. There's a traffic light at Oracle and Suffolk that we'll talk about in a minute. This project, the vacant property, is surrounded by development. This site is actually lower in elevation than both the Suffolk Hills property and residential to the east, as well as Oracle Road. Internally to the site, it does slope from the northeast down to the southwest, which we'll also talk about in just a minute. Next slide, please. Currently, as staff said, it's zoned RS, which is the residential services. Staff did a great job of comparing the code provisions. The main reason that we are, you can see around us, both across the street and in the area, is C2, which is that larger regional commercial. The project across the street is 43 acres. It's really larger, much larger development. And even the Trader Joe's is a 15-acre site. We are for less than 5 acres. I know that there were some questions about traffic and correlating to the Trader Joe's site, which has 130,000 square feet of retail. And as you'll hear in a minute, we're looking to 22 to 26,000 square feet of space. You can go to the next slide. Our request, our desire is to create a commercial, retail, and office site, and that is the request to zone to C1. Again, it's 4.67 acres. You can go to the next slide. So this is the conceptual site plan that I want to walk through. One of the questions that was asked was, why are we not rezoning to CN, which is the commercial neighborhood? CN has a requirement that any retail use has to be less than 5,000 square feet. And as you'll see on this, there's an opportunity for some shops space to be over 5,000 square feet. So while it's not as large as the Trader Joe's Center, we are requesting the C1 for that reason. The site plan is conceptual. This is the layout that we're showing at the moment for the 4.67 acres. And I'm going to walk you through some key components of the project. The uses, we already talked about: retail, restaurant with the drive-through down in the corner, and the office use. It's about 22,000 to 26,000 square feet of restaurant, office, and retail, again, compared to the Trader Joe's with over 130,000 square feet of uses. Only one drive-through is permitted on the site. That's all we're asking for. Code doesn't allow any more than one when you're dealing with a 5-acre site. and it requires that the project, that drive-through be located what's essentially up against Oracle Road. Staff walked through that 250-foot distance. We're expecting the restaurant and retail to be along Oracle Road with some potentially additional retail and office a little bit on the eastern portion. The access, many of you already know, Oracle Road is actually a state highway. It's governed by ADOT, the Arizona Department of Transportation. We will have one access point on Oracle, and that is all we're going to get. We will need to have access onto Suffolk for safety and other reasons. So you'll see there's 2 access points there. We do want to work with the neighborhood. We had started some of the conversations a few years ago with the prior proposal that a deal could not be worked out between that developer and the property owner. So it didn't move forward, but we had started having discussions with some of the neighborhood leadership about potential mitigation to ensure that when folks left the site, if they weren't using the Oracle Road and were going to come onto Suffolk, that they did not use a cut through and go to the east. And we still want to work with that. What we heard from some of the neighbors was you didn't want it totally cut off, because some neighbors may want to come onto the site and use things and need to then go home. But to the extent that it's the general public, we want to push them back out to Oracle Road to go either north or south. We are doing our traffic impact analysis now, and that will be part of the formal application, and it will estimate our traffic for this site. There's no question any development that goes on the site is going to add traffic. It's a smaller site, and our goal is going to be to work with the town and the neighbors to do that as safely as possible. The height, as staff pointed out, is the same. Actually, RS, CN, and C1 all are 25 feet, maximum 2-story height limitation. So this rezoning request to C1 does not include a request for additional height. We're expecting retail and restaurant to probably be the single-story. They still have a little bit higher height, but again, I think I mentioned this before, the site is lower than the property in Suffolk Hills to the east. So that's beneficial when it comes to height, even with the limitation at 25 feet. The site also drops 23 feet from the northeast to the southwest, as many of you probably know from living out there. I want to touch on the edge design, the setbacks and the edge treatment on all 4 sides. I'm going to start with the eastern edge, adjacent to Suffolk Hills. We are sensitive to that edge and want to make sure that we're handling this appropriately. There's an existing alley, as you can see, directly adjacent. That is a 20-foot wide alley from property line to property line. When you get to the western edge of that alley, adjacent essentially to our property line, at that point in this project, there will be a 15-foot landscape buffer. It will be native, drought-tolerant vegetation. We will be working to potentially relocate some of the vegetation on site. Eric, our landscape architect, is on the call, and so he can answer some specific questions. So it'll be alley, 15 feet of landscaping, and then there will be a 5-foot wall adjacent to that landscaping. So Ora Valley puts the landscaping on the adjacent property side of the wall, so the wall will be on our side of the project. And then in addition to that, there is, as staff pointed out, there is a 50-foot setback from the property line for the building. RS currently has a 40-foot, C1 is an additional 10 feet. This particular plan actually shows the building setback, the way we laid it out, even larger than the 50-foot. So the 50-foot is a minimum. So that's the eastern edge. And again, the property drops. So as you have the landscaping in the wall, and then the property comes down in elevation as well. So we've got, as you think about the height, you've got some elevation difference as you get into the site. On the north side, adjacent to the commercial childcare services, there will be a 15-foot landscape buffer, same treatment, the drought tolerant and native vegetation. Where there is a parking lot adjacent on the north, we're required to have a 3.5-foot screen. If it's longer than 40 feet, it will also have to be staggered to give it some depth and breadth. And I forgot to mention that up on the north as well, that 5-foot wall that's adjacent to our landscaping up there will also need to be staggered because it'll be over 40 feet in length. The building setback back over to the north is 25 feet. And again, this site plan, the way it lays out, and because of some potential retention, detention, we're expecting those buildings to be further than 25 feet back. Over adjacent to Suffolk, on the other side on the south, 30-foot landscape buffer is required. Again, where there's parking adjacent, there will be a 3.5-foot screen that will also have to be staggered if it's 40 feet in length or more. Adjacent to the drive-through stacking lane, Oro Valley Code requires a 6-foot screen wall over in that area as well. At this point, we're not expecting any retaining walls on the project. We can work with the grade as is. The building setback on Suffolk is 25 feet. So if you think about that, the landscaping requirement is 30 feet. The building setback is 25 feet. Once we accommodate the landscape buffer, clearly we will be meeting the building setback because it'll be back behind the landscape buffer. Oracle Road, there's a 30-foot landscape buffer, just like Suffolk. Same edge treatment where there's an adjacent parking lot. There will be a 3.5-foot screen wall. Again, most of that is to shield parking lot lights. If it's longer than 40 feet in length, it will need to be staggered. If there's a stacking lane for the drive-through, there will be a 6-foot wall required. That's another one like Suffolk where the building setback is 20 feet because the landscape buffer is 30 feet. We're clearly going to be meeting the building setback. And as you look at this site plan, because the parking is up against Oracle, those buildings are well over the 20-foot required building setback. We've had a lot of questions about lighting. The town has a very stringent outdoor lighting code that has two purposes. Both is to protect the astronomical businesses and ventures in southern Arizona that are critically important to our economy. And the second is to protect the neighbors when a new development comes in. So we will be adhering to that. That includes lumen counts, ensuring that no light spills over, and requires shielding of all of the lights as well. And again, because the site is lower, that's going to be helpful to any of those requirements. Trash and delivery was another question that came up. I'm going to point out right in the middle of the site in the parking area is where we've currently located in this concept the trash and the loading area. It's a shared loading area. It's located away from the eastern edge of the project. Again, there'll be a solid wall along the eastern edge as well as the additional landscaping. Those are located about 140 to 160 feet away from that eastern edge. Next slide, please. We have heard some concerns, we picked up some of the comments from a couple of years ago, even though it was a very different proposal, as well as many of you have reached out, sent in letters, and contacted either us or town staff, and we appreciate that. I'm going to summarize a few of the concepts here to the extent that I didn't address them. I tried to address them in the presentation. The point of this meeting is to understand any additional concerns. I'm sure some will want to echo the concerns we've already heard. This is by no means an exhaustive list. we do want you to know that we're listening, we're hearing you, and we do want to work with the neighborhood as we move this forward. On traffic, two main issues: the safety at the light, and then the traffic going to the east. I already mentioned that we're required and are doing a traffic impact analysis, so we'll have more data and understanding of the traffic in the area, and that analysis as we move forward. The goal for us is to ensure safety for both the existing residents who are there, the adjacent uses, and our potential customers. And we'll work with the town based on the results of that and put in whatever traffic mitigation is required. On the safety issue, there were a lot of questions about the safety at the traffic light. Part of our traffic impact analysis will be the vehicle crash data that is available. We have already started to pull that together. Over the last 5 years, there have been 77 accidents at the light. This is only at the light. 75% or 58 of those were rear end, people not paying attention. 2 single vehicle, 2 angle, 5 side swipes, and 2 in an other category. There was 1 head-on collision in the last 5 years. 7 of them were related to left turns. Of the 77 accidents, 71% or 55 had no bodily injury. 29% or 22 of them had some injury. While we all acknowledge, and those of us who've been in any level of a car accident, any crash is not a good crash. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can mitigate for an intersection, and particularly compared to larger intersections over a 5-year period. This is what we want to do, is try and make it safer as we have discussions moving forward. On the going east question on traffic, we would like to work with the neighborhood to encourage. We expect very little traffic to go east. Most people are going to want to head north or south on Oracle and go to the light if they're going to be heading south. We are happy to work with the neighbors and the town to mitigate and discourage that traffic, things like local traffic only signage and a clear entry into the neighborhood that demarks the neighborhood versus the commercial corridor that's along Oracle have all been helpful in other areas of the Oro Valley community and the overall Tucson region in the past. I already mentioned the height. This request does not increase the height. It's the same height that's currently permitted. We have heard prior and now the concerns about this being an older neighborhood. It's been here for a long time. Many of you have probably seen the changes over time in this area. We do want to work to protect the Suffolk Hills neighborhood. Again, that eastern edge buffer and what we've created, we hope will assist with that, and then doing what we can as well to clearly identify the neighborhood and create that demarcation and honor the Suffolk Hills neighborhood. Lighting, I already talked about the outdoor lighting code. The buffer treatment and the visual barriers we've discussed. The combination of the landscaping and the wall, as well as the fact the site is lower, and then the intervening buildings, we believe will help in a lot of ways with noise reduction. We are requesting a drive-through. The drive-through has to be over closer to Oracle Road. We're proposing it on the corner. And it does have to have the additional walls around the stacking lanes as well. The drainage, I already mentioned, drainage flows from the northeast to the southwest on the site. The code requires us to understand how much water is being drained onto the site from adjacent properties and be able to both accommodate that and then do an analysis of any additional drainage we're going to create and make sure that we are not increasing our drainage off-site. So we've got to take care of the stuff that's coming. We can't create any backup there. And then we have to make sure that it flows off in a way where we're not increasing any issues for our downstream. So we have a couple of different things we're exploring. We don't have a full drainage plan yet. under parking, drainage, retention, detention, water harvesting in all of our landscape and buffer areas, as well as water harvesting in the parking lot where we have landscape requirements. Next slide. So we are very early in the process. Many neighbors seem to be concerned that we were at the end of this process. We're not. We're at the very beginning. We've already heard some of the concerns and questions, and we're happy to answer more. And we're looking forward to working with the neighborhood to mitigate concerns and want to understand them. And many of you have indicated that this property is on Oracle Road. It does make sense to be developed. We think that these are the kinds of uses that are really appropriate for the corridor, and we respect the neighborhood. We want to honor the neighborhood, and we look forward to working with you. With that, Malini, I'll turn it back over to you to facilitate Q&A.
Thank you. All right, so before we get started with your questions, I'd like to explain how you can all participate during this meeting. During this time, if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your computer or telephone generated hand. Just to be clear, I don't mean literally raise your hand in the air. This is a specific computer or virtual feature in Zoom. And there are two ways to do this. So for those participating on any platform other than a phone, please find the participants or more icons. They should look similar to those shown on the screen. They are either located at the top of your screen or the bottom, depending on your device. Click on either of these icons, and the option to raise your hand will be in the dialog boxes. Please note, if you're using the participants icon, the option to raise your hand is at the bottom of the dialog box. For those of you participating via phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Raised hands will be moved to the top of the list in the order in which they are received. I will first announce your name and turn your mute off so you can speak. Please make sure you are not muted on your personal device as well. When I announce who is up to speak, I will also announce the next person so they will be prepared. Once you have asked your question or made a comment, I will remute you to allow the speaker to provide an answer. Again, this is the applicant's charge to justify their requests, so they will be responsible for answering most of your questions. We are going to do our best to get through as many questions as comments as possible, so please keep your comments or questions to no longer than 3 minutes out of fairness to all participants who wish to be heard this evening. I will respectfully remind folks of this guideline as needed. My aim is to keep things moving in a fair and efficient manner. So with that, I see we already have a couple hands. So Steve of Oro Valley, I will unmute you first, and then Linda Snow. So Steve, if you could please unmute on your end.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, may I proceed?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Well, here we are again. Less than 3 years ago, many of the same Suffolk Hill residents currently in this virtual call gathered in Oro Valley to protest the rezoning of the entrance of the neighborhood of Suffolk Hills. It overwhelmingly displayed that it was not needed or not wanted. Yet in seemingly ignoring many of the concerns brought up at the previous meeting, the most crucial of which were not listed earlier in the presentation, we are now faced with an even larger development from Thompson Thrift Development, a developer headquartered in Indiana representing, from what has been disclosed, a non-local property owner. But before discussing the merits of the development in Suffolk Hills, I believe it's only right to first recall the fascinating history of the neighborhood. As after all, Suffolk Hills is perhaps the most historical neighborhood in Oro Valley. In 1904, Margaret Hyde was wed to Henry Molyneux Paget Howard, the 19th Earl of Suffolk and the 12th Earl of Berkshire. Upon marriage, she was given the title Countess of Suffolk, and the couple had 3 sons together. According to the Oro Valley Historical Society, their courtship had been a storybook romance that made headlines in 2 continents. Her husband Henry was tragically killed in combat in 1917 during World War I. Soon after, in the early 1930s, she purchased a large plot of land in what is now Oro Valley, east of Oracle Road and south of McGee Road. the present-day location of Suffolk Hills. In 1936, a large home on the land was built by famed architect from Tucson, Richard A. Morse, as her personal residence. The house was nicknamed the Forest Lodge and has been cited as the first example of modernism architecture in the Western United States. In 1956, Lady Suffolk sold her estate. Her Suffolk Hills home, Forest Lodge, was taken over by the Sisters of Immaculate Heart of Mary. The famous home itself still stands today in Suffolk Hills and is a convent for the sisters, while the 20 remaining acres of land became a boarding school named the Immaculate Heart School, which still operates today. The rest of Lady Suffolk's land, present-day Suffolk Hills, was acquired by the Lusk Corporation in the late 1950s, where the Tucson-based firm built a mid-century modern residential neighborhood throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s. The Lusk Corporation is famous among architecture professionals and enthusiasts around the world, an example being one of their Tucson area homes featured on the cover story of the longest running and most popular mid-century focused publications called Atomic Ranch, as they built some of the best examples of mid-century era homes in the country. Two of Lusk's neighborhoods in the Tucson-Oro Valley area are recognized National Historic Districts. Indian Ridge Historic District and San Rafael Estates Historic District are both on the National Register of Historic Places. A unique feature of Suffolk Hills is that it shares many of the same home models and elevations from these neighborhoods, as well as unique models and elevations of its own. Showing how present-day Suffolk Hills is so tied with the past, all of the street names honor Lady Suffolk and have names related to England, including Cambridge Drive, Andover Drive, Royal Court, and many more. I hope after my admittedly long-winded recounting of the neighborhood story past, you'd agree that Suffolk Hills is very clearly a historical neighborhood and treasure of Oro Valley. It deserves to be nationally recognized as such and afforded the same protections as these other neighborhoods with similar houses with the same champion builder. Building such a large commercial development in the boundaries of the neighborhood, especially with architecture that would not match the unique southwestern modernism of the surrounding area, would irreparably damage the history of the area. I have more to say on the subject, but I will yield the floor to responses or other residents first.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sylvan, did you want to respond to any of the information shared?
I'm not sure that there was a question. I heard everything. I understand it. I think for commercial development, we have to comply with the town's architectural requirements, but I think we'd like to understand a little bit more and see if we can do something to honor. The property's already zoned to do some level of development on it, so we want to make sure I've heard this before, and it is an important part of the Oro Valley fabric, and we're happy to work with you to see if we can make this a win-win.
Okay, thank you. So next we have Linda Snow and then Gary Bagnocchi. I apologize if I'm butchering your names. So Linda, if you could unmute on your end and you're ready to go.
Okay, can you see me? I don't.
No, but we can hear you, so if you want to go ahead.
That's fine. Great.
Yeah.
Well, my name's Linda Snow. I'm the president of the Suffolk Hills Property Owners Association. And what I'd like to, and I really appreciate what everything Steve said about our wonderful community. We have 195 homes, each with about an acre. People move here, you know, for the privacy that we have and for the beautiful vegetation that's been here for so many years. I live right off of McGee, so I am affected by the Trader Joe's zoning and the stores there. And I can tell you that we have a lot of, we have more people that come up from Trader Joe's, say, for example, what I'm worried about is thefts. You know, if there's some shoplifting going on, we don't have that much crime in our neighborhood. We have a neighborhood watch organization, but I worry about additional retail businesses that do bring in people, do bring in more shoplifting. You know, the zoning with Casa de la Luz hospice and a pet center and a daycare. There's no shoplifting going on. There's no criminal activity being brought into the area from there. So I do worry about that aspect also. My biggest opposition is really the zoning, to change it from into a commercial zone from residential with some business. You know, it's very concerning. And I do want to ask you about what was the height of the wall on the eastern side? I know the length was, I think you said 50 feet.
Ms. Sylvan, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So a couple of things. The height of the wall is required by code at 5 feet. And because it's going to be longer linear wise than 40 feet, it will have to be staggered. So it'll run the entire property, the length of the east property line, and it will be 5 feet tall behind the landscaping. The other thing that I just want to point out as we go through this process and this rezoning, and maybe staff can talk to this as well if there's a follow-up question, that once when a property is developed in Oro Valley without needing a rezoning, it goes through a process, but it's architectural design and not a lot of necessarily a lot of neighborhood input. So one of the things that I want to put out there is that as we go through this process, we're hearing a lot of what you're saying. We do believe we can develop a project that will and can honor and create some of the space and the separation between the residential and the commercial, which we already have along Oracle. And we do operate the site in a way where it's important to us that we have security and we don't have those kinds of theft issues going on as well. So we're aligned in a desire to make sure that we handle those issues and are willing to work with you on some of that.
Okay, Ms. Snow, did you have any additional questions or follow-up regarding the wall height? You are going to have to unmute yourself on your end.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm unmuted. No, honestly, we've done a lot of discussion with this on the board, and Gary Bagnocchi is the next one to talk with you, and he is our point person. So thank you very much for your comments.
Great, thank you.
I'll defer to Gary.
All right, so yes, we have Gary Bagnocchi next, and then Steve Oro Valley. So Gary, you're unmuted if you want to go ahead and ask your question. Gary, I think you need to unmute yourself on your end, please. There you go.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. Melanie, you did a great job on my name. You didn't butcher it at all.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank you for facilitating this. And Kerry, I can tell that you've done your homework. I compliment you on that. I have a couple of questions just on the site itself that I see some opportunities for buffering if you're successful in the rezoning, especially the landscape part of it on the east side, which is a big concern. Two of the houses that are just across the alley from you are frequent winners of landscaping contests. They're kind of show homes as far as that goes within the neighborhood. They're both award winning, and if you look across there, you'll see why. They're beautiful properties, and we'd like to keep them that way and like to see that reflected in your property if you're successful. It was just a bit of a revelation during your presentation about the 5-acre requirement. And I think that that's interesting, that you have to kind of claim the adjacent parcel south of Suffolk in order to get the necessary acreage to go forth with this zoning change. I think that that's interesting. That's something that I'll be certainly talking to planning and zoning about at their hearing in July. Is there, to your knowledge, is there any other properties that are asking for that same accommodation?
I can answer that from the town's knowledge. Is there currently aren't any other rezoning requests to go to commercial. So this is this a test case? I'm just not familiar with this being done before. Sure. So the zoning code does require a minimum of 5 acres for all new commercial 1 districts. So I apologize. There might not be any other requests right now, but commercial 1 districts in town are all at least a minimum of 5 acres.
I understand that part of it, but this particular proposal is using the property that's south of their development to get over that 5-acre threshold.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. That is something I don't think that I have seen before in Ore Valley, but it may have happened. I'm just not familiar with it. The other question I have, this is actually for Andrew Call. You still with us, Andrew?
Sir, he is. If you want to go ahead and ask the question, we'll have him answer it for you.
Okay. Andrew, I'm just kind of curious. You're the developer. Are you also the qualifying partner? Do you actually do the construction on these projects?
So, Mr. Call, if you'll please unmute on your side. There you go.
There. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that question. Typically, we go out and we find a partner general contractor that helps us build the project out. That's our typical process. We do have a contracting firm within Thompson Thrift as well, but we normally go out and find a good qualified general contractor, local, and work with them to build our projects out.
Right. Thank you. And Mr. Manoji, if you have maybe one more question, we can get to that, or I'd like to proceed to the next people for fairness. So I've unmuted you.
May I ask just one more question that's not too long? The letter that I submitted to both you and Andrew, Melanie, is that part of the public record?
Sir, yes, it will be sent to Commission and Council for their consideration should the applicant move forward.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Steve Ore Valley and then Rosemary Lane. Steve, if you want to go ahead and ask your question or provide your comments.
I'm unable to start my video at the moment, I believe.
We can hear you if you want to go ahead and ask your question or comments.
I prefer to be on video if that's possible, since people representing the other side are currently on video.
Sure. It's not possible at the moment. We're trying to keep the applicant on the video so they can answer the questions.
So do I have the right to be seen but not heard in this meeting? Is that correct? Or heard but not seen, I should say?
It's really just an efficiency to keep the meeting moving efficiently. It's more just the time it takes to get everybody's video on and off. So.
Right, that point's been duly noted. But moving on to my next point. Suffolk Hills is a modest neighborhood comprised of a relatively small amount of residences. While it sits on a respectable amount of land, most of the parcels are around an acre large, bringing the population neighborhood not something that someone would refer to as dense. Between the intersections of Oracle and Ina and Oracle and McGee, which is roughly one city block, perhaps two, there are currently 33 operational restaurants and 50 operational retail stores, including Pita Jungle, China Phoenix Restaurant, Honey Baked Ham Cafe, Beyond Bread, Frost, Sauce, Charo Vita, Teaspoon, Wildflower, Coco's, Riley's, which is coming soon, Nothing But Cakes, Tucson Tamale Company, True Land, Guadalajara Grill, The Bagel Joint, Saffron Indian Bistro, El Charo Cafe, Chang's Beijing, Caraba's Italian Grill, Smash Burger, Dunkin' Donuts, Jerry Bob's, Mama Pizza, Bottega Michelangelo, McDonald's, Famous Sam's, Arby's, Village Bakehouse, Panda Express, KFC, E.G.'s Taco Bell. On the retail side, you have Safeway, Walgreens, PetSmart, Verizon, Whole Foods, Corey Creations, Pac-Man, Room of Rugs, Bicycle Ranch, Luke Jean Company, Fashion Eye, Talbot's, Park Avenue Jewelers, Brent Walker, Chico's, Joseph A. Bank, One Stop Nutrition, Worldwide Shoes, Shoe District, Good Threads, A Better Shade, Mattress Firm, Fleet Feet Sports, Leslie's Pool Supplies, Trek Bicycle Sports, Wild Birds Unlimited, Sprouts, Day Days Patio, Summit Hut, Home Goods, Kohl's, Tucson, Cactus and Koi, AT&T, Sheffield's Diamonds, Mattress Firm Clearance Center, Mattress Firm, America's Mattress, Cactus Quilt Shop, O'Reilly Auto Parts, Games Workshop, Walmart Neighborhood Market, Begin Again Consignment, Play It Again Sports, Happy Saguaro, Sweet Repeats, Trader Joe's, Marshall's, AutoZone, Ace Hardware, Anthony Cigar Emporium, and Alfonso Olive Oil. I realize I named all these businesses was time consuming, and I apologize for that, but it is necessary to put this into focus, just how many there are. To put in perspective, if a resident patronized one of the restaurants a week, said resident could visit a new restaurant every week for 9.5 months without repeating themselves. In fact, there's already so many restaurants that there are multiple in every category, including 5 Mexican restaurants, 5 Italian restaurants, 5 burger restaurants, 3 Chinese restaurants, 3 diners, 3 sandwich shops, and 3 dessert shops. Many of these restaurants are within walking distance, clearly demonstrating that there are more than enough restaurants for the residents of Suffolk Hills as there is. And as for retail, there are 9 clothing stores, 5 supermarkets, 3 mattress stores, 3 shoe stores, 2 auto parts stores, 2 furniture stores, 2 recreational gear stores, 2 bike stores, 2 cell phone stores, and the list can go on. Not only do Suffolk Hills residences have every retail location they would need, but in many cases, they have multiple to choose from in the same category. Yet although the area certainly has a need for many of these restaurants and businesses, the current amount without this further proposed development have proven unsustainable. To show this, one has to look no further than the restaurants and retail that have closed over the past 2 years in this corridor, including Chipotle, Fresh Produce, Planet Smoothie, Bird, Subway, and Ragazzi Northern Italian Cuisine. I happen to frequent Chipotle and was able to speak freely with many of its employees, who prior to closing informed me that they were told by corporate that this Chipotle store was the lowest performing store in the entire Tucson area. Showing it wasn't simply a matter of locals disliking one of the most popular restaurant chains in the United States, the prime location where Chipotle once existed in Cascabos Plaza remains vacant almost 2 years later. It's a site that isn't alone in the area though. A quick drive or walk from Suffolk Hills over to Plaza Ex Candida, and one can see that there are currently 3 retail empty spaces and 1 empty restaurant space. Over at Cascadovas Plaza, there are currently 3 empty retail spaces and 1 restaurant space. Across the street at La Toscana Village, there are 2 empty retail spaces. Conwood Plaza currently has 2 empty retail spaces and over 5,000 square feet of office space available. And Trata de Oro has 4 retail spaces ready to rent out. Oracle Crossing, the shopping center across the street from this proposed development, has an empty space over 5,000 square feet large. Including the empty office space at Cottonwood Plaza, these shopping centers alone have over 25,800 square feet currently available. The proposed combined size of the buildings in the development we're meeting about, 25,350 square feet. Without rezoning and building the shopping center, even if the entire shopping center has maximum occupancy, it seems as if most of the prospective tenants would be able to currently open their business elsewhere amid the many vacancies, rendering it...
I'm sorry, Steve, it's been about over 3 minutes. If you could please get to your question, I would appreciate it.
I don't have a question. I believe this time was for question and comments. Is that correct? Is that what you stated earlier?
Correct. If you could please wrap up your comment.
Absolutely. I'm almost done. Excuse me, I lost my train of thought, but to finish my point, and that's not taking into account that we remain in a global recession that has impacted countless businesses around the world. With retail and restaurants closing already in the Tucson and Oro Valley area, it's a very real possibility that some of the businesses I previously listed sadly could fall victim to the downturn economy. This would even further render the construction of more retail space unnecessary if there were additional vacancies in nearby shopping centers, as well as questioning if the proposed center could attract new tenants at all. The last thing anybody wants is an empty shopping center as the face of their neighborhood. The area of Suffolk Hills in question, and I do want to remind everybody that this plan would also render the small development across the street, currently low traffic offices, in the same zoning area, meaning these offices could be transitioned or outright demolished to make room for more high-density shops or restaurants. It's currently zoned as a residential service district. The definition of a residential service district is a district composed of certain land and structures used primarily to provide administrative, clerical, and professional offices of a residential scale and character to serve nearby residential and commercial areas, as well as the town as a whole. The district is designed to be a transitional zone and should be used to buffer low-density residential uses from more intense land uses, districts, and heavily traveled transportation routes. Does that not seem like a fitting definition currently of this parcel of land? There's a reason why this land was zoned in such a manner, and I hope after hearing the points I just put forth, it's agreed that it should stay this way.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. I do want to remind everybody, of course, we want to hear your comments as well as your questions, but we have over 50 people in the meeting, so in efforts to keep it running along efficiently, please keep those to under 3 minutes. So next, we have Rosemary Lane and then Hillary Lurati. So Rosemary, you are unmuted. Please ask your question or provide your comments.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve. My I have a couple of questions. Particularly, the first one is Ms. Sylvan, talked about doing a traffic, determining where the traffic was. My husband and I have lived in this subdivision for 36 years. Before there was a traffic light there on Suffolk and Oracle. And it was difficult. It was difficult to get out at that time. The way the roads are now, McGee has speed bumps on it. And so customers going into Trader Joe's and that area, they are slowed down. Suffolk does not. And we have noticed, because we do have the light, we have a lot of people cutting through the neighborhood, and there is nothing to slow them down on Suffolk. There are no speed humps. And so it is often, it's very dangerous. I'm concerned about people who are going to be going, particularly through the drive-through, that this is going to be a shortcut, and it's going to be an easy shortcut. You can go through, you can go wherever else you're going to go, east on Suffolk. And so my question is, I guess for Ms. Sims, is does Oro Valley have any plans to negotiate with Pima County or who is ever in charge of the roads here? I'm assuming that part of it, particularly the area right by Oracle, is Pima County. I was told that by Oro Valley when I tried to get them to paint the change lanes so that they were more visible. They aren't. Those of us that live in the area know what lane you're supposed to get into. Otherwise, it's a big guessing game. So my question for Ms. Sims is Oro Valley planning on anything to alleviate the additional traffic if this goes in?
Sure. Thank you for your question. I'd first like to ask Ms. Sylvan to provide more information about the traffic study. Then I'm happy to have our town staff also discuss traffic should this go through. So first, Ms. Sylvan, can you please provide more information about the traffic study?
Yeah, traffic impact analysis is required as part of our application. So we'll be analyzing the different uses and the traffic. Particularly, the peak times are usually the times that are most important to everybody, the morning and the afternoon peak, as well as the daily traffic. That's when there's backup. We'll be working with the town, and again, as part of this process, there's an opportunity to work with the neighborhood as well on traffic mitigation. We'll be working with the town mainly relative to any timing that needs to change on that traffic light. If there's any other movements or other things that need to be mitigated from that traffic report. We've also, like I said, we're willing to and would like to use this as a stepping off point to talk with some of the neighborhood leaders about doing things to help mitigate traffic going east. This is not an unusual circumstance where you've got a development on a corner and a lower density residential just on the other side, and there are mitigation techniques that can be used to encourage and in some cases force traffic to go in this case it would be west towards Oracle Road. So those are discussions that we want to engage in.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvan. And Ms. Lane, to answer your question, the town does work with the other jurisdictions, especially with Oracle Road. We work with the Arizona Department of Transportation to review the traffic numbers that will be submitted by the applicant. So those that need to be involved are involved during that conversation. Okay, and before we get to Hillary Lorati, I do want to ask Ms. Sylvan, could you please speak about the economic, some of the economic concerns brought up with that Ms. Steve from Oro Valley brought up earlier with regard to retail and its capacity right now? And you're unmuted.
Sure. I'll touch on it really quickly, and then actually I'm going to ask Andrew to also touch on it. There's no question that we're in an unprecedented time right now with the COVID, which is different than a normal economic downturn. There is a sense that this will, when we don't know, but will be somewhat under control. Oracle is a major corridor. The retail that was mentioned, as we all know, is not just serving Suffolk Hills. It's serving a lot of that C2 is there to serve the regional commercial. We are seeing a lot of interest and in retailers and restaurants. There certainly are some that are going to start to close down, but there are others who are really figuring out how to take an opportunity here to do drive up and take out in ways and unique ways for restaurants that are not only going to be able to survive, but some are really thriving. So the office market is very flat right now. A lot of people are downscaling because they're going to have to create social distancing, and a lot of people working from home. So the future of the office market is really unclear at the moment. But retail and restaurants seems to feel very confident that we're gonna come out of this healthy. Andy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Sure, I can just real briefly touch on that. And we, Thompson Thrift is a company, we're a very low risk company. We don't like to spec build. We go into this with our eyes wide open. We really look at this hard. We have a lot of local and national partners that we work very closely with. We like to have it very substantially leased, if most of it leased up before we get to a point where we're pulling permits and going down that road. So like I said, we're very low risk on that end, and we don't go in and spec build on this. But I think Chris Hake, who's also on the call, he may be able to answer that a little bit better. If Melinda, if you want to turn it over to him.
And can you repeat his name one more time, please?
Chris Hake. Or not, but I mean, like I said, we're very early in the process of this, but we do a lot of market research. We will work with a lot of local brokers, and our national businesses that we work with, they do a lot of market research as well as we go into this. And we make sure we understand the market, any voids, and fully understand the direction that it's heading before we fully commit on any projects.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next we have Hillary Larotti and then Andrea Stotsky. So Hillary, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, good evening. Hi. I wanted to clarify if the corner pad right now that is in the southeast corner that currently has Scarrett Group and then another company that moved in probably about maybe 6 months ago, maybe longer. Is that the same property owners as the property they're looking to rezone?
So Kerry, if you please go ahead and answer.
I'm not entirely sure I'm understanding where. Malini, is it possible to pull up the site plan or the aerial?
Sure, just give us one moment.
Okay. And can Hillary give me a better?
Basically, it is south of Suffolk and east of Oracle. Those two current office buildings. Is that property that those buildings are on, is that the same owner as the proposed site with the drive-through and commercial rezoning that's been requested?
It's not. It's a separate owner. And it actually goes to the question that I think it was Gary asked, which is there are properties that when we rezone, if a local jurisdiction has a minimum acreage for the zoning category, where other property owners will join in. So it's not a completely unusual situation. And this is one where it is a separate property owner down at that office complex.
Great, thank you, Kerry. Hillary, did that answer your question sufficiently, or do you have other questions?
Well, to follow up on that,
Sure.
who would have made the decision to include that other portion of that property in order to bring that up to the over 5 acres needed? And are they represented here? Because I feel that they really should be, because we would need to be speaking with them as well.
Okay.
Yep. So for purposes of the entitlements, I'm representing that property owner as well, because they're not looking to redevelop the site at all. It's not part of the new proposal. It's just an as-is condition. But I am, for purposes of the rezoning, I'm representing the full over 5 acres. We just focused on the 4.7 acres, and we have that developer on the call, or on the at the meeting, because that's where the modifications are taking place.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. So next is Andrea Stotsky, and then Cheryl and Carl Stiers. So Andrea, if you want to unmute on your side, you're good to go.
Good evening, thank you. Looking at this map, I feel really terrible for the people that first house on Suffolk, because I used to live near a restaurant area up on Campbell and Skyline that had been put in, and all kinds of promises were made about trash and stuff like that. And when trash is being emptied from a restaurant at 11:30 midnight, it's loud. There are extra pickups for that. And the way this map is set up doesn't look like trash really is going to be, obviously it's not delineated, but it's really loud. I would hope for it to be closer to Oracle for those people. And a 5-foot wall does not stop that kind of noise. Also, looking at this map, being that Oracle will only allow you to have one entrance, or whatever the rules are, to only access Oracle Road in one place. If it was larger, I think it would reduce the need to come in off of Suffolk. I have tremendous concerns about accessing Suffolk Drive overall, because it is residential, because it is the only road into that neighborhood that doesn't have speed bumps. Because some of us have things we're doing from time to time. You don't want to go over 20 speed bumps to go in and out of, your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. I also am really concerned about fast food right on that corner. And really, I just wanted to share my concerns. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Kerry, if you want to respond?
I heard, and as I'm looking down, I'm writing them down. So I'm not falling asleep. I'm actually writing. So I'm not sure there's much to respond. I understand the concerns and the issues.
Okay. All right. So next is Cheryl and Carl Stiers, and then I do want to mention that we want to make sure that everybody who hasn't had a chance to speak gets an opportunity. So after Cheryl, I'm going to go down to Steve Bonist, because I don't believe he's spoken yet this evening. So Cheryl and Carl, you are unmuted if you want to go ahead.
Hi. One of my concerns is when we head north on Oracle already and slow down to turn on Suffolk, we do not have a turn lane. And there's sometimes people that think there's a turn lane and they almost sideswipe us turning east onto Suffolk. Now we're going to have people that are going to this property. We're going to slow down, be signaling to go on Suffolk. They're going to think possibly that we're going into this business area. So I think there's potential for more rear ends. I know that's a bike lane, so the chances of getting a turn lane are slim, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Ms. Sylvan?
Yep. That's actually one of the turning movements that we'll be analyzing in the traffic impact analysis, is whether or not right-hand, it's called a right-hand decel lane, is required. I actually am a cyclist and live around here and cycle there, so I'm aware of the bicycle lane, and there are ways to handle that. So we'll be looking at the traffic movements, and like I said, this will be one of the intersections, and we'll be looking at justifications for right-hand decel lanes, both at Suffolk and Oracle and at the Drive on Oracle as well.
Thank you. Okay, next is Steve Bonus, and then again, if we don't have any other people who haven't had a chance to answer a question, we will take second rounds of questions from others. So Steve, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a member of the board for the Suffolk Hills Property Owners Association. I've been involved for a number of years in Suffolk Hills. And one of the things that we have had is a large number of complaints about the shopping center, the Trader Joe's shopping center, with refrigerated trucks standing there overnight with their air conditioning running, garbage collection at 3:30 in the morning, car doors closing when restaurants close, car lights, all this sort of thing, overhead lighting over the parking lot shining into people's backyards, trash being blown into people's backyards from that shopping center. So that is going to be a major concern for this area, for this development. And the other thing I'd like to say is, or I have a question actually, the development on the south side of Suffolk to the east of Oracle, can that be redeveloped as well if it becomes commercial 3? In other words, turned into restaurants or whatever?
Okay. Kerry, if you'd like to provide an answer,
Sure.
please.
A couple of things. That Trader Joe's shopping center, as I mentioned before, is 15 acres and over 130,000 square feet. So there are, we will need to work with you all, as I said before, on making sure we mitigate some of these issues. That is a much larger site, much more difficult to manage. So, but we want to work through some of those issues. The C1 zoning would permit the additional uses, but because they are not proposing a preliminary development plan that changes, it's just an as-is for the office, they would have to go through a process and engage. And I don't know if Malini, you want to talk a little bit about that as a change. They would have to do a change of the preliminary development plan for that part of the rezoning and have to engage and work with the neighbors on that layout.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvan. And yes, that is correct. So the rezoning would broaden the uses allowed on the southern parcel. But if they did change those uses within the building, they would have to go through the town first. So if there's no other questions from people who haven't spoken yet, I will have Steve from Oro Valley speak first, and then Rosemary Lane. Again, please keep your comments and questions to 3 minutes. We are nearing 7:30, so I want to respect everybody's time. Okay, so Steve, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. So there's a reason why Suffolk Hills is such a desirable neighborhood to live in. Much like Lady Suffolk selected the area due to its seclusion and natural beauty many years ago, the residents of Suffolk Hills follow in her footsteps today. Many of the residents of Suffolk Hills have selected it due to its seclusion, away from the bustling city centers of Tucson and Oro Valley, the dark night sky, where one can take advantage of some of the best stargazing in the entire country, quiet ambiance free from city noise, as well as a gorgeous desert and mountain views. A major commercial shopping center at the entrance of this neighborhood would negate all of those wonderful qualities. If there ever were to be a commercial shopping center inside a quiet neighborhood with over 20,000 square feet of space and hundreds of parking spaces, The value of seclusion of the neighborhood is instantly lowered. When there's a large commercial shopping center with many lights, signs, parking illumination, and more, the value of the dark skies of the neighborhood is negated. When there's a commercial shopping center inside a neighborhood with potentially hundreds of patrons, delivery trucks, sanitation vehicles, and more, the value of the quiet ambiance of that neighborhood is negated. When there's a development that will rip up acres of beautiful natural desert, some of which I've been told has already been marked for removal before this project has proceeded, and be permitted to build up to 2 stories, the value of the views and the desert scenery are negated. Many residents and visitors can attest to the property values of Suffolk Hills resting on these mentioned natural values of the neighborhood. Allowing this commercial shopping center to be built would negatively impact property values, as those looking to attain the peace and beauty of the neighborhood will no longer be attracted to Suffolk Hills. Can the developers ensure and prove out that the property value of those who own residences will not be negatively impacted by this development? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Kerry, would you like to respond to any of those comments?
If there's something I need to respond to, otherwise I hear it and I'm writing it down.
Sure. Okay, next we have Rosemary Lane and then Hillary Lurati. So Rosemary, you are now unmuted.
Thank you very much. I wasn't able to ask my second question earlier, wasn't quite fast enough, but my question goes right along with the gentleman that talked about the property to the south that was going, actually has to be considered as part of this parcel in order to have enough. The fact that they want to go along with this and that those office buildings, as Ms. Sylvan talked about earlier, are sitting empty. This seems to me, if restaurants are booming and offices are not, and they want to be rezoned also, it's very concerning because restaurants there would make it to where Suffolk Hills restaurant residents couldn't get in. Now, Ms. Sims has said that this would go back to Oro Valley and would have to be voted on again. But Ms. Sims, wouldn't this mean that we would be right back where we started? And before you cut me off, the drive-through also has to be approved separately. Is that correct?
Thank you, Ms. Lane. So the drive-through is a separate request in addition to the rezoning request. I'm going to ask Ms. Sylvan to please talk about the impacts of property values as well as some of your other questions regarding restaurants. So Ms. Sylvan?
Yep. First, I don't want, I wanted to clarify, am I still on?
Yes.
Okay. When I mentioned the office market being a little bit what I called flat, I was not suggesting that the actual offices that are in that southeast corner are, I believe they have a very high occupancy rate. There's not a lot of vacancy. That office complex is doing very well. They're not looking to redevelop or reposition that at all for commercial. When it comes to property values, there's a lot of things that affect property values. The overall market, which is totally unrelated. Most of the time, if you've got a high quality development next to you, as opposed to vacant land, there's increases in property values. But again, there are so many other factors that play into property values that are unrelated to what's going on adjacent to you. Making sure that we operate this in a way where we're not creating some of those concerns and the unintended consequences, that there's the appropriate trash pickup times and delivery times, that there aren't things that are going to be disturbing those of you in the area. Those are all things that, if you don't have to go through a rezoning, there's not a lot of opportunity to work on work on zoning conditions and other things that can assist with the neighborhoods. If it's developed as is, that opportunity isn't there. So there's an opportunity here to, we hope, work with us and help to create help to solve some of those issues that would happen, whether it's developed under C1 or under RS. Did I miss one of the questions?
No, I think that covered it.
Okay.
Okay, so we are nearing 7:30, and again, I want to respect everybody's time. So I want to make sure that Karen has a opportunity to ask a question as she hasn't spoken yet, and then again, we'll have Hillary go next, and then Karen, and that will be the last of the questions for tonight. So Hillary, you are unmuted. Please ask your question.
Hi, I'll make this quick. So I'm curious to see if there have been any studies by the applicant to see what the income difference would be for that property that they're requesting the zoning change on, what potential income they might have if it is RS versus C1. I'd be curious to see. I'm assuming that it is financially motivated. I do see a lot of things that, you know, are potentially detrimental to our neighborhood if it were to be changed to C1. So I would like to know briefly, maybe this will be another time, what the developer, if it were to move forward, would be looking to do for our neighborhood, since they would most likely stand to have a much greater income from these properties zoned C1 versus zoned RS. Thank you.
And Ms. Sylvan.
I think Andy spoke earlier about the fact that they don't, you know, embark on this stuff lightly, and the uses were analyzed. Generally, a developer and a property owner, if they can use their existing zoning and make a project work, they're going to do that, as opposed to going through these kinds of processes. So as I said, the office and even the medium density residential, townhome, even apartment uses are not what the market is suggesting along Oracle Road right now. It's the retail and the restaurant where the demand is. I've said this a couple of times, and this is a serious request or offer. We absolutely want to work with you. It sounds like you have a homeowners association, and we saw the letter come in, and there's leadership in that association, and we are happy. My information is available on the town's website, and we would be very interested in having, Hillary, that exact conversation. Which is, you know, what is it we can do to work to mitigate. I think I've said that a few times on a number of the issues. So I'm repeating myself on purpose. It's a serious gesture.
Great, thank you. And so we're going to have time for one more question from Karen. Again, I want to mimic Ms. Sylvan's response that this is the first of several opportunities. I'll be going through those next steps next, but we do want the conversation to continue. So Karen, you are unmuted. If you could unmute on your end, please. There you go. Go ahead.
Very quick question. Is it at all possible to have two entrances to the development off of Oracle Road and just one on Suffolk?
Sure. So Ms. Sylvan?
It's a good question, and we would love that. Arizona Department of Transportation, ADOT, which governs Oracle Road, we've explored that in the past, and they have said no. We will continue to ask, but we've been told kind of emphatically no. Malini, Chris, who's also representing the client, had wanted to talk a little bit about the market question, and he is on the call. His is the phone number with area code 317.
Sure, let me unmute him. I apologize. His area code is 317.
Yep, it's down. Well, on my screen, it's 4 from the bottom. Oh, he's unmuted.
Okay.
Hi, this is Chris with Thompson Thrift. I assume you can hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
First and foremost, I'd like to say these are all great and very constructive questions and comments that we're getting. We appreciate this. We look forward to working with the neighborhood. You look at our company, I've been with it almost 15 years at this point. You know, our mission statement is to positively impact our communities that we work in. So this goes right in line with what we want to do as a core value for our company. In terms of the question that was a couple speakers ago regarding property values and studies, Andy and myself, we are purely on our retail team. So all we do is develop retail projects. So we have not done any studies of if it's developed commercial, the value will be X. If it's developed residential, the value will be Y. So we would not be able to produce that type of study. We're solely, again, focused on commercial. In terms of property values, there's a lot of discretionary info, and it's more of an art than a science. I could tell you when we go into projects, I like to put myself in the shoes of the residents that surround the projects we're in and what I would want by my house. Where I live in Metro Phoenix here, we have probably 30 restaurants or so that you could walk to with your family and have a nice dinner or lunch at. So at least from our angle, a lot of the developments that we do are seen as amenities to communities versus detriments. I know everyone has their own opinion on that, but I think for each person that you find that has a negative to say about that, you're probably going to at least find somebody that views it as a positive. It's just what lens you're looking at it through. But to reiterate Kerry's point, we want to work with the community. That's what we do on all of our projects. That's not unique to this one. So we look forward to meeting everyone in person when it's acceptable to do that, working hand in hand with you, and ultimately delivering a first-class project to the community.
Great, thank you. So again, we are actually just right at 7:30, so I want to kind of wrap us up. We do want the conversation to continue, but with regard to next steps, again, we have not yet received a formal submittal from the applicant, but do expect it after this meeting. As such, we currently do not know when the second meeting will be scheduled. However, we will continue to monitor the COVID-19 situation, and with guidance from the governor as well as our town council, we will have that meeting in person if it's safe to do so, or again online. The requests do require consideration by both the commission and town council, all of which are yet to be scheduled. So please keep a lookout for the yellow signs and postcards, which will notify everyone of these meetings, all of which are opportunities for you to provide your comments and feedback. The goal of this process has been and will continue to be to listen to everyone's questions and concerns. Next slide, please. Lastly, is the town's planner processing the applicant's request. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. Also, again, please go to ovprojects.com to visit the project webpage to stay updated and informed about it. I encourage everyone to bookmark this page as we will be posting the video of this meeting, the presentation slides, summary notes, as well as updated information, including the applicant's formal submittal when it does come in online here. I want to thank you very much for all your time and have a good evening. Thank you.